Hola, buenas noches a todos. Good evening. This is Abelardo de la Peña Jr., Director of Marketing and Communications for La Plaza de Cultura y Artes, welcoming all of you to En Casa con la Plaza. En Casa con la Plaza, of course, is our 3 times weekly presentations, demonstrations, conversations, and performances, bringing you the best of our community's history, art, and culture from our homes to yours. We've been doing it since April 2020, pretty much the start of the pandemic, and we're continuing, even though things are definitely getting better for our communities. Our sponsors tonight, PepsiCo and Kaiser Permanente. Thank you so much for your sponsorship. If you've joined us on Zoom, please use the chat features and the Q&A feature to ask questions. Let us know where you're viewing from so we could do some shout outs here. We might take the questions during the conversation or after, but please ask those questions, make your comments, do some shout outs. Those of you joining us on Facebook Live, please let us know where you're viewing from as well. We'd like to hear from you, ask questions, make comments. We may take your questions now, may take them later, but you'll be very interested in knowing more about our guest's life and his work. Since the late 1960s, Oscar Castillo has documented the Chicano community in LA, from major political events to cultural practices to the work of muralists and painters. Through his photography, he's explored essential major themes of our community, including social movement, cultural heritage, urban environment, and everyday barrio life. His varied approaches, which include photojournalism, portraiture, art photography, have guided his work throughout the years. The Oscar Castillo photograph collection at the UCLA Chicano Studies Resource Center contains more than 3,000 digital images that are available through an online archive. And though he's, I guess, more or less retired from the day-to-day, you'll never see Oscar without his camera. And this is a quote from him as why he does it. I had a personal need to do it, meaning photography. I never thought I was going to be well known for this. I never really thought I'd be creating a legacy, but I think he has, and I think you'll agree. So please, Oscar, join us tonight on En Casa con la Plaza.
Hello, Abelardo, and anybody out there. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your Plaza en la Casa.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Oscar. This is a momentous weekend, of course. As things are opening up, people are getting vaccinated. I hope you've gotten yours, and I'm sure you have, Oscar. We're gonna the end of the March. Of course, we celebrate the birth. The day of Cesar Chavez, the great labor leader, civil rights activist, and more. And that's what we'll be talking about today. You'll be showing some of your photographs that you've done throughout the years, the early years, your early photojournalism years, and talking about those photographs and telling the stories behind them. But before we start with that, I'd like to know a little bit about the story behind Oscar and how you got into photography yourself.
Well, it's a long story, but I got into photography. I think my interest was tweaked when I was just a youngster. And my parents, especially my mother, she had a family album, which of course this was before Facebook and before a lot of television, but that was our entertainment, looking at the family photographs. So that kind of instilled in me a sense of family and community. But I developed an interest over the years, but it really I think came to I guess blossom, or says, when I was in Japan in the 60s, and I was there for a year. And of course, everybody in Japan has a camera, and I bought a camera and I started to teach myself, and documenting the Japanese, the cultural communities. But then after I returned to the States in '68 and went to college at Los Angeles Valley College, I started documenting there. I guess that would be my start of my historical documentation. And I started documenting the events there, the student events and the political events. As a matter of fact, I think I got introduced to the Tom Bradley campaign at the time. All the students were very active, and Tom Bradley was running for mayor, and one of our professors encouraged us to get involved in his campaign. So I got involved with the campaign, or taking pictures, and then from that led to, at the time it was the UMAS, the United Mexican American Students. It was sort of like a fraternity sorority, and started documenting the Chicano moratorium. I think that all that started in '69, but quite frankly, I'd never heard of Cesar Chavez until that time. I know that Chavez's movement I started in '62 when I was still in high school. But as a side note, what really interested me in Chavez was that in high school, one of my book reports was on Mahatma Gandhi. And I think that Cesar Chavez's whole philosophy was based on Gandhi's teachings. And so there was a parallel there. And that was my common ground for getting involved with Cesar Chavez. And when I transferred to, at the time it was San Fernando Valley State College, I got to know people like Rudy Acuna, who's my dear friend and historian. And I could say that he's my mentor because he influenced my direction greatly. And there's other professors that encouraged me to follow that path of documenting photography. Although I kind of had a dual major, Chicano Studies and art. So I was a dual major, two-dimensional design, photography. And that's how I was able to learn about photography, and as an art form and as a documentary, journalism type photography. But on an occasion, Dr. Acuna took a couple of students to go to visit Cesar Chavez, and got to meet him personally at 40 Acres and at the time La Paz being their retreat, and also 40 Acres. So I was there when, I believe, when Cesar Chavez and the farm workers signed a major contract with the growers. Of course, their organizing and of the union had began in over 10 years prior to that time. But I think that their first major victory was in '72, if I'm not mistaken. But when they signed a major contract having to do with organizing on a union and banning, I think, up to 9 pesticides. So anyway, that's kind of the political point, kind of tying it into the photographs that we're doing today. But
I have a couple questions before we dive into that. One, what were you doing in Japan?
I was stationed there. I was in the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years.
All right.
And it was quite I went to Japan for a year, actually 13 months. And I was stationed there. I was stationed in the Air Wing, Marine Corps Air Wing. But I was there for a year. I was at El Toro for 2 years, Japan a year, and then came back to Camp Pendleton. And I was then released in '68. Released in '68. Yeah.
Well, second question, what was your first camera?
Well, my first camera was in high school. It was like a little, back in those days, they could call them an Instamatic, or a popularly known, people joke about their Brownie camera. That kind of a, very simple, you load it, you shoot it, you take it to the drugstore, and then you get the pictures back.
Sure.
But I still actually have some of those pictures.
And what did you buy? What was your first camera that you bought in Japan?
It was a Yashica. No, I'm sorry. It was a Petrie. It's called a Petrie, Petrie, I believe. And that was a 35 millimeter, and I used it to shoot basically color slides and color film. And then when I came back and started, when I was in college, I learned how to process black and white. So I started processing my own black and white. But my first professional camera was a Nikon that I bought in the early '70s, because again, I mentioned Rudy Acuna, because that was my first professional job. He hired me, his publisher out of New York, which was an American Publishing Company. So I was still a college student, like a freshman or sophomore, I forget. But I became a professional at that point. So I had a contract to do 3 books, social studies books. So I went out and bought a Nikon camera so I could do a good job. And the books were at the time they were adopted by the California Board of Education, I believe, to be used in throughout the state in 7th through 12th grade social studies.
Well, that was quite a first professional gig,
Yeah.
Oscar. So you were at the intersection of Chicano studies and fine arts academically, but you were also in the thick of it. What was actually happening in the community, using your fine art skills, your photography skills to document history in the making. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the first photograph that you're sharing with us, and if you could tell us a little bit about it. So here's the first of all.
Okay.
There you
go. Okay. Well, I chose this one because this is a picture close up of Cesar Chavez, and this was at one of the. He had a lot of support in the urban area, and this particular one was at a Safeway boycott where they were boycotting grapes, people not to buy grapes, and boycotting the store Safeway to. It was their way of applying pressure on the growers to allow them to form a union. So it was most of my photographs I might share with you is I documented more the urban struggle, so to speak, and the urban support, where other photographers spend a lot of time in the fields, but because of my situation, I was, in an urban situation. So I did go to a couple of farm worker events out in Central California, but most of my stuff is in urban Los Angeles.
Sure. No, of course, the strategy employed by the United Farm Workers, of course, was to gather support among the farm workers themselves, to organize them for better contracts, better working conditions, of course. But it was the urban outreach, going out to cities, major cities, Los Angeles, Chicago, back east, San Francisco, which really was which brought consciousness to the struggle, and that's how a lot of us in the community got to know about Cesar and his work by what he was doing. Then also his workers out in the urban areas. So no, that's I understand that that's the bulk of your work here. And so let's go ahead and show a second one here, if you could tell us about it.
Okay. Just as a note before I go and explain into this, as one of my classes at Northridge, I took a class called Field Work in Barrio Studies. And in that class, you chose a community organization, went out and spent a semester there, and your paper was based on your research in that organization. And I chose the Farm Workers Union, or at the time, I think organizing committee, I forget. But it was based out of San Fernando, California. And that was kind of our adopted home community. A lot of people were from San Fernando, Pacoima. And so I used to go there on Saturdays or perhaps during the week and just spend time there. And so I got to find out where the urban protests were. So that's how I was able to document that. But we can get back to that other photograph now, if you like. Now, this was on one of the trips that we took up to La Paz and to 40 Acres. And I chose this because on the far left, you see, this was the first time I met Dolores Huerta, the woman standing on the left-hand side of the group. And then down the line, there's other dignitaries that had gone to visit Chavez and Huerta. And also in there, Rudy Acuna is in there, but he's hidden. You can't see him. He's behind the girl that's got her hand raised up there on the left-hand side. And then next to a couple of people down holding a little child up on his shoulder is Jose Angel Gutierrez from Texas. They had brought in a group from Texas to talk to Cesar and to to kind of collaborate and share ideas as to their, I know the farm workers had a similar group in Texas and one in Arizona, but other people in the shot are Abe Dapia, who was running for governor at the time, Nacho Perez from Texas, Mario Cantu from Texas. So we had gone up there to spend the day, and they brainstormed and shared ideas. So we posed for that group shot. So that's the historical shot for me.
Very much so, yes. So here's another shot of Cesar Chavez.
Right. This was done in the early 70s also. This was in Coachella Valley, and it was a farm workers union convention, and they would have them. This particular year was in Coachella, and other years they've had them in Fresno. So this was in early 70. I went down there, and I like it because of very dramatic lighting, and then the use of the Virgen de Guadalupe. That was his kind of a image that he used as a rallying point for farm workers, because I think most of them were, Catholic or at least religious. And so I think that kind of allowed him more access to the community and to, as a symbol of peace, which is again, his stance of nonviolence. And that particular picture was, I shared that with the farm workers, and this was after Cesar passed, but they used it for a commemorative card, which they sold at their events or at their gift shop, and they used it as a tribute to Cesar.
All right. Well,
incidentally, that picture is also at the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian acquired some of my work, and they acquired that one.
Well, here, let's share it again. And this is where at the National Portrait Gallery, or?
It's at the American Art Museum.
Fantastic. Well, no, it's compositionally, lighting wise, as you say, your fine art background is really your training in fine art is really showcased in this beautiful photograph, along with the impact of just what I sense is a great sincerity on the part of Cesar in communicating what the farm workers were doing. So beautiful, beautiful photograph. Just real quick, we have Christine Jones. Hola desde La Crescenta. Davidia Barba, greetings from Glendale. Ed McCann, joining from Oaxaca, where he curated an exhibition of La Raza photos at the Centro de Fotografía Manuel Álvarez Bravo that included several of Oscar's brilliant photos.
Hello, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll get to some questions. There's a couple here. Let's see. Oscar Gonzalez, he's watching in the Riverside, California area. He's sincerely appreciative of the work of Oscar Castillo. He's wondering if there were many opportunities for minority photographers in the commercial venues back in the 60s and 70s.
Well, I kind of explored that. I know there were a few photographers that were successful. I know I approached the LA Times at one time, because at the time they had a magazine called Home Magazine, and I went and saw the art director, and he liked my work, but his advice to me was to keep on shooting flowers. And of course, the kind of, I think that there was it's a difficult question, because obviously if you allow your work to be commercial and do exactly as the art director wants, then obviously art directors don't want to see what we're shooting, then you're not going to be successful. But I know where I grew up in Texas, just as a side note, there was a very famous photographer who had a studio there next to it. There's a theater there in El Paso and the Segundo Barrio. It was either called El Colón or I think it was El Colón. And right next door was a photo studio. And this photographer, he and his brother were both very famous, and they were shooting during the Mexican Revolution. So this photographer, his name escapes me. I think his name escapes me at the moment, but he had a very famous portrait studio, and his archives are now at University of Texas at El Paso. You can research that, and you can see his photographs. As a matter of fact, my family used him as a photo studio, and I have many pictures that he took of people in my family. But to get back to Oscar's question, I know of a couple of photographers. One, George Rodriguez, he was successful. He got to shoot. He was worked out of NBC, and he shot for like Tiger Beat magazine and stuff like that. So he's very well known. And so it was difficult then, as it is difficult now, because I mean, I was able to make a living as a photographer over the years. I used to do stuff for Chamber of Commerce's, for major corporations. I've done stuff for Mexicana Airlines, for Pepsi, I mean, for 7-Up Bottling Company, for Westinghouse Electric. So besides my social political stuff and historical documentation, I had to, in order to make a living, I had to get out there and get involved in the business world. So I was able to meet some people who helped me. They said they liked my work. They hired me. And for 20 years, I was the city photographer for the city of Pico Rivera. And so I was fortunate in that way. And it's possible to make a living, but I always had my personal stuff on the side.
All right.
And
well, let's get back to the photography that you're going to share regarding Cesar Chavez. So did you consider this personal photography or documentation?
Well, I consider it both, because I did it as you noted earlier in your presentation, that it's something I felt that I had to do. And I was, through my work, I was able to meet many of the community organizers that existed at the time, like, of course, Cesar Chavez, everybody knows, and there's also Corky Gonzalez, although I didn't do a lot for him or with him because he was in Colorado, but I did spend a semester in Texas working with Jose Angel Gutierrez out of Crystal City, Texas, and I got to also meet. I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Well, let's showcase the next photograph and tell us about this one.
Okay, well, this is kind of if you know 35 millimeter film, you know that it goes in sequence. So on the left, you see Dolores Huerta there. And speaking of Corky Gonzalez, he's sitting right next to her. And apparently the young man standing over Dolores Huerta is her son, who I understand is now a doctor. And then as I pan the camera to the right, so this is on the same stage, but so I shot the picture with Dolores and Corky, and then I just panned over, and then I shot a picture of Cesar Chavez. So it's a kind of variation of the other picture. So and then right there's a brown beret standing there, but the brown berets traditionally served as security for Chavez. So basically, I stitched those together to make one photograph.
No, it's beautiful.
And that was it.
I wouldn't have known that it was two different photographs, but now that you mention it, you can see the dark separation between the two frames. But it's basically a diptych.
Yeah. I like that it kind of it follows. It's basically two pictures, but all in one. So.
Beautiful.
And that was also in Coachella.
All right. Well, here's another one. Tell us about this one, please.
That's at the same place, same Coachella. And then you see Corky Gonzalez on the left, Cesar Chavez, and a singer. I don't know who his name is. I'm sorry, I don't know. But I think the theater and music was very much part of his organizing style, because you know, who they're probably singing De Colores or something like that, or a lot of people wrote songs that have to do with the farm workers. And I was also fortunate enough later on in my documenting to meet the Teatro Campesino. Later on, you'll see the Teatro Campesino, who was headed by Luis Valdez. But at some point, the Teatro Campesino produced what was at the time called guerrilla theater. And they would have stories. They would use theater to tell a story to kind of say, well, look, this is what's happening to you. This is what's happening. And they would kind of, it was like a novela. Everybody likes novela. So basically telling a story, but they're entertaining you with theater and acting and music. So I think that that was important to, as an organizing tool for Cesar.
Beautiful. Well, right here, Fred Ross, thank you for joining us on Zoom. He says the singer is Alfredo Figueroa from Blythe.
Hello from Blythe, all the way out there by the Colorado River, right?
Right. And then we have Oscar Gonzalez again. He thinks that maybe Casasola was the photographer of the Mexican Revolution.
Great. Yes, that's the man. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that info, Oscar, and thank you very much, Fred, for letting us know that the singer was Alfredo Figueroa. Lots of other saludos from Edward Hayes Jr. Saludos a Oscar. Lopez Felix Franco from Pico Rivera, and all of you joining us on Facebook. And Angel Guerrero, thank you for your dedication in documenting our journey. That was Angel Guerrero. So let's bring up another photograph and tell us about this one, Oscar.
Well, this was shot in Delano at 40 acres. And this was on an occasion when I was up there with a documentary crew. They were doing a 16mm film on Chavez. And we got to go up there and spend some time in 40 acres in La Paz. But this was just some of the community, you know, some of the followers. And I like it because the lady, you know, you see this lady wearing a hat with a Huelga eagle, and she's carrying this flag, and even shows the year, 1973, Cesar Chavez with the Huelga eagle. And I did you know, I was with the crew. My role was as a still photographer. When you have a documentary crew back, they were shooting film, 16mm. So you have the cameraman, the director, the audio man recording the sound. And then my job was to document them and the people and the event. So I got to shoot a lot of nice photographs. And that was one of them.
And imagine
this is him.
Another one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is Chavez coming into the venue. And he has you see the two bodyguards behind him, and you see this was not my crew, but there was another crew there doing a film. There's a cameraman behind him walking into the location, and of course he was, you know, he was really hands-on. You know, he liked to meet and greet the people and talk to them, and everybody was there paying their respects and hoping to, you know, to hear him talk. And so that was that shot.
Well, we have Roberto Garcia. Saludos, UFW alumni here. Awesome photos.
Great, thank you.
We have Eric Barbosa watching from Norwalk, California. And then somebody you may know, Michael Sedano from Pasadena. He's asking about the eagle. How many frames did you get with the one-sided flag, wrong side out?
Yeah, I saw his post. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's a writer and a photographer. And I'll share a trick with you, Michael. Take the negative and flip it horizontally, and that way it'll come out, the eagle will come out the right way.
All right. Good tip. All right. Yeah. All right, tell us about this one. This is a beautiful photograph. We used it for our communication about this session. Great smile on Cesar, right there, surrounded by admirers, of course. What was the circumstance here?
Well, that was the same event there in Delano. And as I say, he always liked to be one-on-one with people, talk to them. And so I was in there, get to be, within a couple of feet from him and take a nice close-up.
All right. Well, we have a question here on the topic of photography. And since these work that you're showing are in the black and white genre, is black and white photography a dying art, or is it coming back? Processing studios have closed, and it could get expensive to process black and white photography.
Well, my answer to that is, I think for a while, film in general, color, black and white, has taken a big dip. But I think professional photographers have always loved the film. I used to shoot black and white because it was inexpensive for me to process and print my own negatives, print my own prints. Of course, now all that is done on the computer, but there is a film which is black and white, but is processed in color chemistry. So you take it to any lab, 1 hour lab or any lab, you don't have to have black and white processing. It's a film that's processed in what's called C41 chemistry. So you can process it. And the trick there is, I was talking to a friend of mine, is you can then, once it's processed, you have the whole film scanned at once. So you can still have the best of both worlds. You can shoot film, which the grain is beautiful, the detail is beautiful, the whole feeling is there, but you can print it digitally. And I think it's making a comeback. A lot of people, or some companies are reintroducing black and white film, but and a lot of people, like, I've taken a color image, a digital image, and you just desaturate it and you print black and white. I love black and white, but the story behind, as I say, the reason I shot black and white, it was inexpensive. You don't have to pay a lot for the color film and a lot for the processing, and you couldn't process it yourself. It was prohibitive to process. So
Sure.
now it's all digital. Yeah.
No, you could do black
I
and
hope
white.
that answers the question.
You could do black and white back
I'm
then.
sorry?
Probably even now you could still buy the chemicals, mix them up yourself, find yourself.
Sure, you can do that.
Yeah. All right.
I have a young friend who I met, a young photographer, aspiring photographer, two of them, and they're going to set up a dark room in Boyle Heights, and their whole philosophy is to or to discover black and white film and print it the old-fashioned way. So it is becoming fashionable and something that people are doing.
All right.
So
well, thank you.
Yeah,
share that with us so that we could help to get them out there in the spotlight. Okay, we're gonna return to the photographs, and here's one.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of guerrilla theater and Teatro Campesino, this is the maestro, the Luis Valdez in the middle, and his theater group. On the right is Felix. I forget his last name. He's all of them were active members of the Teatro Campesino. And you can see the Huelga flag in the background. And they were performing at an event, as they had many, times in many places. And they performed for the farm workers, and they would sing, musical songs and music having to do with the union, the forming of the union, and, cultural events that went along with it. And they also toured the United States, going to college campuses and different places. I got to see them at UCLA doing, which is my favorite, one of their favorite places, called Carpa de los Rascuachi. And I was able to photograph them there. And of course, later on, Luis Valdez went on to, great fame, writing La Bamba, I think was the movie. La Bamba, the story of Richie Valens. Right. And then Zoot Suit and others, but he also did a lot of shorter TV versions of their work. But I always like the old teatro live performances. But
Oh yeah, you had to be there. But he still continues. And in fact, they're teeing up for our next Friday. We have Dan Guerrero of of course, Dan Guerrero every other week here at En Casa con la Plaza. His guest is Luis Valdez. So tune in next Friday. But let's go back to a photography here of Oscar Castillo. Please tell us about, describe this one for us.
Okay, this is again another event, an urban protest, and you can see Cesar Chavez there in the middle, and they're obviously at Safeway. That was a target of their, they concentrated on the Safeway stores because they were a major chain throughout California. And of course you see, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but the gentleman walking away from you, to me, is obviously a farm worker. And then over on the right, you have two people that are probably also farm workers, and then a younger girl. But there was also many places, there was community people and college students that would participate. And anyway, they were there passing out leaflets, asking people not to shop at the store. And of course, that's what caused the grape boycott to be successful, the lettuce boycott to be successful, and the store successful boycott of the chain as well, which helped them to sign contracts with the farm owners.
Oh yeah, and here we have another photograph in front of a Safeway, and then you see the Ralphs in the back. Why do you think Safeway itself was targeted most greatly? And I'm sure it's because it was one of the, at the time, probably one of the largest grocery chains in the area.
Probably so. I mean, I would say that's so, but you can also see Ralph's logo in the background. But I think Safeway was much, much, much larger. I mean, I don't have the statistics, but I know they used to have Safeways up in, in the Northern California, in LA and San Diego. I think Safeway at this point is no longer exists in this area, but Ralph's does. But I think that was their choice, where they would have the most effect, of the biggest buyer of the produce.
And your access to, and you have very close access to Cesar Chavez in the photographies that you're showing. Did he? Yeah, I'm sure he knew you personally. He would recognize you and he would welcome you. What was your relationship with him?
Well, it was. I really enjoyed, being that close, being able to get that close to him and have access to him. But I think what really clinched it was on one of my visits to La Paz and to 40 Acres, he greeted us wearing his Nikon camera. So he himself was a photographer.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So
and I think he liked, the way I took pictures. I wasn't intrusive. I didn't pose people. I'd wait for things to happen, and I became part of what the event. So I think he felt comfortable with me. But what's interesting is I once asked his son, one of his sons, I forget which one, but I said, I would love to see negatives that Cesar Chavez shot. He goes, well, they're probably at the archives in wherever they're at, Chicago or Detroit. I think there's a museum up there that has Cesar Chavez's archives, and they're probably there, but I would certainly wish that the family would share them, at some point, have an exhibit of his work, or at least, I'd love to see his work.
That would be
what he saw.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see things from his point of view. Okay, yeah. We have a few more saludos here. Maria Acosta, saludos from Latino Center of Art and Culture in Sacramento. We have
yes, hello.
Olivia.
Hello, Maria. She was a fellow student at Cal State Northridge, along with other students.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for joining in, Maria. We have from Olivia Menchaca, beautiful pictures, great memories. Thank you, Oscar, for the only picture I have of me at SFVSC. I believe you also took pics of our Teatro Aztlan, and that's Olivia Menchaca from Camarillo, California.
Yes, I remember her, and she was in the Teatro Aztlan. The Teatro Campesino kind of gave birth to other teatros, and one of them was Teatro Aztlan at Northridge. But I remember Olivia.
All right. Well, let's move on to this next set of photos. This is a different location. We saw the ones where he was at Cesar, involved, of course, with the boycotts, the in front of Safeways. But now tell us about this photo.
Well, this was at the Farm Worker Convention in Fresno, and this was, I believe, in 1974. And that's Senator Ted Kennedy and his wife standing there with Cesar Chavez. And also on that stage that night was Joan Baez. And it was, the event was their annual convention where they did, convention stuff for unions. They voted on union members or directors and officers. But an interesting thing, I'm not sure who did the Huelga mural behind them, the Eagles, but on the left-hand side, you can see a little corner of a mural by Carlos Almaraz, a very well-known painter. But I think he went up there and spent I don't know how much time, but it's probably covered in his documentary. But he painted a large mural for the farm workers movement, and as have many artists have helped to support and promote Cesar's work, like the Malaguías Montoya from Sacramento, Jose Montoya, and more. Here in town, of course, it's kind of a side story, but Barbara Carrasco worked very closely with Dolores Huerta. So there's a lot of artists that were inspired by the farm workers movement, and there's murals all over the place that pay tribute to Chavez, which I've documented a lot of them.
Very good, and we'd love to see those at some point. But thank you so much for teeing us up to another of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes activities. We're looking at opening real soon, and one of the exhibits that you will be able to see when you visit La Plaza is Carlos Almaraz. Evolution of Form is the name of the exhibition. It's some little scene and some of his famous work from throughout his career, but keep your eyes and ears and intranets open to so that you can make reservations to visit La Plaza and to see the exhibit of Carlos Almaraz. As you say, one of the artists that really felt the call to share in the struggle with Cesar Chavez and the farm workers. All right, so let's go to the next photo here. Describe this one, please.
Okay, well, this was in the 80s, and this was taken here in City of Commerce. And this was a kind of a press conference and informational dinner where Cesar Chavez presented the current State of the Union at that particular time. And in this picture, on the far left is, I think it's Dolores Sanchez. She was a publisher of a local newspaper, and her husband at the time was Joe Sanchez, who was talking to Cesar over here in the middle. You can see half of his face, but he was a fire commissioner on the county of Los Angeles, and he also had a chain of grocery, or he's one of the Mexican American Grocers Association. They had a grocery, but next to Dolores Sanchez is Helen Chavez, Chavez's wife, sitting there. And I may add, this was taken at Stevens Steakhouse in Commerce. It was kind of a local place where everybody had their, quinceañeras and rock concerts and, political things. And anyway, there's also in that picture was Richard Alatorre, a local assemblyman or councilman at the time.
Oh yeah, Richard Alatorre,
Richard Alatorre.
A very influential leader in the city of LA and in the region in general. I believe he was an assemblyman, a council member as well. No, so you were in the thick of these different, when Cesar was out organizing, when he was doing his outreach, the political aspects. What was your feeling of getting involved with things? Did you yourself feel that you were a supporter of the United Farm Workers as you were taking photographs, or how do you divide the two if you needed to, if you felt?
I think I was, I mean, I hope I was supportive in that I was there and taking pictures, and I shared those pictures, whenever I could to help people be aware of historical events. So in that way, I mean, I was helping. I was never on salary. That was all, on my own doing. At some point, maybe somebody will. I hope that somebody. Well, anyway, that's a different story. But my first effort to archive my work is at UCLA. But I hope, and of course, I've been very fortunate that the Smithsonian got some of my work. And I think right now, if I may plug myself. In the 70s, I did a visit to the Tarahumara Indians in Chihuahua, and for many years, those negatives have been in my private collection. I haven't shared them until recently. A young curator, I've mentioned him to encourage me to make an exhibit, which we did. We did an exhibit. It was held at the Casa 0101 in Boyle Heights. Then after that at the Muckenthaler in Fullerton. And right now I'm trying to negotiate sending them to the University of Texas at El Paso, because that's my hometown and they have a museum there. But anyway, I'm researching different venues that I could create historical archives. And I have, literally hundreds and thousands of images that I would like to find a home for or share them with people.
All right.
So Cheech, if you're listening, let's talk.
All right. Okay, Cheech.
Okay.
One last shot here. As you said, many artists were in support of Cesar Chavez and the movement. So tell us who this gentleman is.
Well, this is a very famous artist, another artist who supported and was pro Cesar Chavez. That's Ignacio Gomez. And this was a poster he did, but interestingly enough, that poster became a three-dimensional sculpture, which is now in San Fernando by the metro station. But if you go to the metro station, you see that drawing turned into three-dimensional bronze sculpture, which is like bigger than life. It's a big mural. And he also has a mural I think in Riverside and in different locations. But interestingly, in the background in that picture, if I may, there was two people, Rudy Vargas, who was a very active also in documenting videos, the gentleman in the dark sweater in the background, and then George Rodriguez, he's there, the gentleman with the striped shirt, but he's a well-known photographer. But this was at the Latino Book Fair, which was produced by James Olmos, and I had I had a booth there along with some other people. We were featuring posters and art, and Ignacio had his booth there. But anyway, over the years we become friends, and I share, I have pictures of him and many historical people.
All right. Well, you've got a lot of fans here, and a lot of people who recognize other people here. In one of the photographs, Max Avalos was recognized, overlooking Cesar, one of his aides. We have Fred Ross also mentions Max Avalos. Of course, the guitarist in one of them was Ed Robledo. Felix Alvarez was also ID'd. So, no, thank you for all who have been sending us your comments, your questions. Right here, we have Sibeli Enciso say she recommending to share with the Chicano Research Center in Stockton, California. Isabel Rojas Williams, thank you, Oscar, for your great job in documenting the Chicano history of our city from its very beginning. A fabulous documentation.
Great. Well, thank you, those people, for tuning in.
All right. Eric Magaña is asking. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Max, the photographer they mentioned, Max, who is it? Max Avalos?
Yes.
I think he was in one of the shots holding the camera, right?
I believe
and
so.
He's a well-known photographer.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Eric Magaña is asking, aside from Cesar Chavez, of course, you talk about your breadth of experiences both in commercial and photojournalism and art photography. He's asking, did you also ever visit or photograph any of the railroads or fields during the Bracero program?
Well, I'm not that old. I think that no, I didn't. I mean, at the time that was happening, I think I was still a young person living in El Paso. I mean, I've heard of the Bracero program, but I'm not that old. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, it ended officially in 1964. So okay,
Okay.
so that was but we have also somebody recognizing your work and thanking you for the work that you did during the walkouts.
Right. I did a lot of that. I thank you very much. And just a side note, UCLA through the Chicano Resource Center did an exhibit of some of my work and some of I'm sorry, her name slips my mind, but she's the woman photographer from La Raza magazine. But they selected some of our work, and it's on a permanent exhibit at Roosevelt High School in their library, having to do with the walkouts. And it was done last year.
Deborah Weber?
Yeah, Deborah Weber. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
All right.
her work and my work, because I mean, there was a lot of photographers at the time, but for some reason, I think, well, they selected our photographs. I think one of the reasons was they were trying to show women's involvement. And I always tried to be fair and show both men and women. And Deborah, I think a lot of her work was neutral, but I think we captured what they were looking for. So they chose, I think, about 20 photographs, and they're there at permanent display at the library at Roosevelt, having to do with the walkouts.
All right. Well, that
was done by Carlos Aro. Yeah, Carlos Aro, Dr. Aro.
Yeah, and Dr. Otto is part of, he's here. He's thank you for recording our history. Your photos in the 68 walkouts were a significant addition, signed Carlos Otto. So thank you, Carlos, for that reminder. And also, I believe you had some of your photographs in our exhibit at La Plaza, Ya Basta, the East LA walkouts and the power protest. Is that correct?
Yes. I've been very fortunate to be involved in a number of exhibits at your museum. The one on the murals, the
Murales Rebeldes during
Murales Rebeldes, and
right.
So I've been in a couple of exhibits around town, but I enjoy working with your museum and hope to continue to do that.
Well, thank you. It's been our pleasure to have you work with us, and also we're talking about some other possible joint venture here. You're still taking photographs, and you've been at some significant events during La Plaza's history. We're going into our 10th year this next month, so you'll probably be seeing some more of Oscar's photographs here on En Casa con La Plaza.
Great. Yeah. Well, it's been great being on this Zoom, and if there's any other questions, I know I'd be glad to share information with anybody.
Well, I'll read off just a couple more comments here. Oscar Gonzalez, he's saying, one of my friends, a grad student at Cal State LA by the name of Sergio Jimenez, works in a group that tries to organize street vendors in LA. He's wondering if Oscar is involved in documenting these movements, including movement of migrant reform.
Well, I have on my frequent journeys into East LA and Boyle Heights, I have documented street vendors, as I do many people in the street. I think that's my favorite. I like doing anonymous people, and as I do famous people, but I think documenting everyday events helps tell a story, and I'm not actively involved with any groups right now, especially in the last year, but I do continue to go out in little photo safaris and spend a day out there with my camera and just shoot. And I collected hundreds and thousands of pictures. So I do remember some of my stuff, like in Echo Park. I have pictures of people selling balloons and walking around the park. And then in Boyle Heights, vendors. And that brings back memories to me too, because when I was a youth in El Paso, we used to go to Juarez, and there over there you have a lot of street vendors selling corn, and so it's all tied in. The back then, now it's all one picture, but I do enjoy street vendors and the street people.
All right. Well, Catalina Lara is asking, as a parent of a teen who is interested in learning photography, telling stories of those who aren't being told, what are your suggestions as far as those stories that can be told eloquently through photography?
Well, I think any subject that one chooses, I think if the most exciting pictures are if you document something that's dear to you. In other words, don't go out and do a kind of documentary on something don't know about or don't feel about, because pictures are going to be very kind of sterile. So I think the best documentation is something that you have a personal feeling for or involvement with, and that's kind of what sets my goals, or my inspiration.
All right. Well, your inspiration and your passion on the topics that you especially in tonight's presentation are very well shown in the photography that you've been taking throughout the year. So we thank you for that, Oscar, and thank you very much for joining us on tonight's En Casa con La Plaza. Now, a little pitch about our next En Casa session coming up. In keeping, of course, with Cesar Chavez Day, we have on Wednesday, the 31st, Paul Chavez, the president of the Cesar Chavez Foundation. He'll be talking about the continuation of Cesar's life work, of course, with talking about the foundation's work with farm workers, but also in housing, in labor rights and civil rights. So tune in next Wednesday, March 31st at 7 p.m. We are taking Monday off as a holiday at La Plaza to celebrate Cesar Chavez. But then again, next Friday, En Casa con La Plaza with Dan Guerrero and his happy hour. So thank you to all who joined us tonight. I think we got to all the questions, the comments. Richard Soto, thank you, Sibeli. We have, let's see, Oscar McCahan. Thank you to Oscar and Abelardo. Delightful presentation and conversation. We appreciate that. And thank you for tuning in. If you caught us, if you want to see this again, or if you didn't catch the entire program, we recorded it. We'll be posting it on our YouTube page at La Plaza LA, and also on our Facebook page. It'll remain as a video there. We've been sharing it on Facebook Live, but it'll be archived on our Facebook page and also on our website, lapca.org. To catch our future sessions, including Paul Chavez next week, and all the others that we have in store for the next few weeks and into the months to come. Even after we open La Plaza, we will continue with En Casa con La Plaza. So for all of you that joined us from out of town, from out of state, thank you so much. And thanks to our sponsors again, Kaiser Permanente and PepsiCo, to the staff and the Board of Trustees at La Plaza. And like I said, watch your social media, your websites, and En Casa con La Plaza will be announcing the reopening of La Plaza de Cultura y Artes real soon. So with that, good night, Oscar. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night, Abelardo, and everybody. Thank you so much.
All right. Buenas noches a todos.
Buenas noches.